In this podcast, we chat about the defeat to Preston, review our season, and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Avenelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Avenelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast, the season review show with Johnny, Dana and Tom. And we are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro matchday chatter in a podcast. And well, Boro's season finished very disappointingly indeed with a 4-1 defeat at Preston. The defeat saw Middlesbrough finish in 7th place on 70 points. Guys, now the dust is settled. I want you to describe how you're feeling in as many words as you can describe. Dana, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to the season as a whole, I have been pleasantly surprised with the change around and what Chris Wilder has brought to the side and to the club. And we've seen a platform of promise now that makes next season all the more exciting. And yes, it was a really disappointing defeat yesterday at Deepdale. But, you know, I said this after the game, actually, that it's the most calm I've been after a 4-1 defeat. You know, it's never nice to see your team go down like that, but at the same time, as I said, there's just so much to be excited for next season, and I'm really looking forward to the rebuild and what Chris Wilder could do with a full season under his belt.
Okay, Tom, are you echoing Dana's thoughts there?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just said a very different answer just after the game yesterday, but having calmed down now, yeah, I mean, it's really kind of a start to something new in terms of like the next couple of years. So yeah, it's disappointing that the season ended the way it did. Really disappointing result yesterday. But after the rebuild in the summer, we're hopefully going to have a much better season next season. It's just I'm impatient, and I want to say that now. So.
I like how you're quoting High School Musical there by saying start something new as well.
Didn't even realise, but
one for you there, Dana. Nice for you to catch on. But I echo both of your points. I think yesterday was really poor in terms of performance-wise, but the bigger picture, yeah, I think that future is just so bright. And I think Chris Wilder's press conference afterwards, which we'll come on to in a second, it filled me with optimism and knowing that we're in the right direction. Everyone is on board with Chris Wilder as manager. And I think that we, apart from like yesterday and a couple of defeats throughout the season, we all know that there's just something bubbling under the surface. And I feel like next season we could be having a completely different review show. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it could be celebrating a promotion. Now that we've jinxed it, it'll be a relegation one. But let's look back to Preston then, and we'll move on to our review stuff in just a moment. But we were so optimistic going into the game yesterday, but then Sheffield United thumped Fulham. Luton were gifted a winner, and then Boro didn't turn up. Dana, what went wrong for Boro yesterday?
We just choked under the pressure of a do-or-die game, unfortunately. And I have to say, Preston were good. Let's give them credit. Their game plan was fantastic and very effective as well. They caused us all sorts of problems, really. They had situations where one of the strikers, and it was usually Emil Rees, would peel off, would split off Archer, go out wide. The centre midfielder would do the same, joining the wing back, and then we'd have 3v3. It would pull Crooks and Tav out to the wide, and then there would be so much space through the middle, and Hausen was getting exposed because of that. And because of that, they were able to pick us off pretty much everywhere. And we play with a high enough line as well, by the way. And it's something that I mentioned to Gab Sutton on the EFL debate. That high line is a danger against us, to be honest, because we saw yesterday against Preston, Barnsley, the same balls in behind and over the top. our defence is immediately on the back foot, and you've got Dale Fry who's trying to get back, but probably just doesn't have the pace to be able to recover the position. And then there's a situation with the sweeper keeper. We've got 2 stopgap sweeper keepers, so that needs to be addressed in the summer. So that's a big weakness of ours, a big vulnerability. That high line and playing in behind. Preston use that kind of weakness to their effect, to their gain, and we were just sloppy all over the pitch, really. We were incredibly slow and laboured, and it's been the case for the past 6 or 7 games where we're not moving the ball quick enough, and we've become very predictable, unfortunately. The triangles on the right-hand side that were once very threatening against teams are just, they've been nullified, and then we don't really have the answer to it, unfortunately. So looking ahead to next season, I'd like to see that changed and diversifying the attack a bit so we're not as predictable as we've been finishing out this campaign.
Yeah, and I think with that, then I think when you mentioned like the high line there, I can see why definitely Boro do it. It's very aggressive in terms of the way we play. It tries to pin the opposition down, makes them having to run further up the pitch to try and score, but it does leave you, vulnerable to counter attacks. And I think I think there's a really good breakdown on this on T4 IRL. I think where the breakdown the Real Madrid Man City game, and they explain like the high line of City and how it affected the game against Real Madrid. But then the one change that they made and how Ancelotti changed it, it explains a lot of things around like Boro's system as well. Not just obviously Man City's and Real Madrid's system as well. But I feel like if you want to educate on that, then there's a video which I think we might link it after this. But yeah, it's a really good clip.
Yeah, and as well, a kind of point on that high line, it's obviously a way that we want to play because we want to be a possession-based team and push the opposition, kind of condense the pitch a bit and play in front of that sort of half of the sort of middle third and then the final third. But we need to be more effective in possession for that to work. And you can change the defence, push the line back a bit, but that's just not going to happen. We need to be more effective in possession, which is where we're going to have the sort of fruits of the style of play, and try to avoid as much as we can the vulnerabilities behind. So yeah, I think for me it's all about the possession and how we're using it, and we're just not using it effectively because we're not quickening the tempo at all.
Yeah, slow tempo and like no rhythm while play is just like so. It's so important in games. I think if you don't have the rhythm in the game and try to be as productive as you can on the ball, and maybe that 1 to 2 touch, quicken up the pace, trying to stretch teams with the width and keeping it on the outer space as well. It's so difficult to play against. But like you were saying there, Dan, when it comes predictive, it can be your worst enemy because teams can just sit in a very low block, nice and compact shape, and break on the counter, and I feel like that's how Preston played at times yesterday. They kind of knew what was coming, but when they did, it was like an explosion of attack, and that's where it caused us so many problems. But Tom, were you disappointed in the way we performed yesterday? Because you were saying there it took you a while to calm down. You weren't too happy in our group chat either. It was a really disappointing way to end, wasn't it, for you?
Oh, absolutely. It just seemed like we didn't turn up at all. If you were neutral watching that game and you didn't know which club was going for playoffs and which one supposedly had nothing to play for, even though I don't buy that because who likes losing? Like, no one does, so they're still going to want to win that. But if you had to pick as a neutral which one was going for playoffs, you would have said Preston. They were first to every ball. They were putting themselves around physically, and our players just didn't look up to the fight of it. And that's the most disappointing part of yesterday. You could have taken that result if it looked like our team had tried, but other than by the first 15 minutes where it looked like it was really kind of Hausen and McGree trying to get things going, that I didn't really see any fight from us, and that was the most disappointing part of yesterday.
On a more positive note then, Dana, you were in attendance yesterday, egg sandwiches in hand, enjoying the game. But
enjoying the game
and the atmosphere. I think the one positive yesterday was definitely the fans in attendance because they were absolutely fantastic, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. I mean, we did our bit, first 15 minutes in particular, but before news filtered through that Sheffield United were winning, it was raucous. And even when news did filter through that Sheffield United were winning, we were still loud, and we did all that we could to G the fans up. They were singing Sweet Caroline before the game, Chelsea Dagger as well. It was an unbelievable away crowd, both visually and audibly. And I mean, listen to this at 4-1 down as well. And that came at a point where I'm sure many other people were feeling this as well. I was so deflated, watching that game, watching that performance. It's not great, is it? It's not a great feeling to watch that display in a game where Boro really needed the exact opposite of that. And I was quite down. And then everybody just started singing while they said they were waving their scarves around. And it was unbelievable. It was that kind of prepping up of spirits that was really needed. And I think at that point, I was like, I don't really care about this game anymore. Just kind of see the season out and have a little bit of a party and have a good time. And yeah, we all did it. It was brilliant. It was brilliant to be a part of that yesterday. It was really fantastic. I think Boro fans showed the best of what we can do when we all rally together.
Yeah, it was nice to see that sea of red and the guy in the banana costume, which just what a way to stick out, by the way. Just to see someone in a yellow banana suit. Unreal, that, by the way. Absolutely unreal. But I think with that, Tom, on that positive note, it's really important to kind of forget this now and look ahead to a really positive transition and look to the future, because that's what it should all be about now.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see an advantage of not forgetting it as well. I don't think anyone in the club would want to just kind of forget how badly we played yesterday. We should have that as a benchmark of let's never play at that level again. But also, yeah, if you can put it if everyone can put it at the back of their minds, Wilder said as of Monday the rebuild's beginning and there's going to be some surprises and stuff like that. I think it's just important to press on with that summer transition now and get it done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about the summer, Craig Johns announced yesterday on the Gazette where he said that Boro have offered a deal to Boro captain Johnny Hausen. Denny, are you happy with that? Are you happy with that be like the first bit of business we do in the summer?
Yeah, he's been brilliant since Chris Wilder came in. He's took to the style of play really well and he's improved massively under Wilder, and he was the only player yesterday for me that emerged with any credit, and he was massively let down by, I suppose, well, maybe not so much his teammates, because I think Preston did a fantastic job at basically pinning everything against Hausen and pulling Crooks and Tav out of position and isolating Hausen. So, I mean, credit to Preston for that, but he was massively up against it. It was one man against quite a few from Preston, and it was a shame to see that, but he did emerge with credit from the game, and he's been a fantastic performer, our most experienced player, I suppose, when you take out Sol Bamba from the equation, because he is out of contract as well, probably not going to get a new deal. And it's good that we've got that experience, but not only experience, good performance as well. And second half of the season, or Chris Wilder part of the season, Hausen has been fantastic.
Yeah, I remember saying on the podcast in the October saying I just felt like Hausen's legs have just completely gone. The rug has just been like lifted underneath him, and I wouldn't have been surprised if he got replaced in the January window. But I think with Wilder's system, it protects his weaknesses, but also really shows his strengths. And yeah, I think that's kind of the reason why we've seen that improvement so much over the last few months. And I think he's thoroughly deserved a new contract. And I'm happy that Johnny's on the journey for next season. So, but I'll keep on with Wilder and the press conference though, because he said some really good things after the game yesterday. He said, "You'll see on Monday the level of work that needs to be done, eye to eye, face to face, or on holiday. It'll be dealt with. You'll see the level of decision which I've made for quite a long time in what I believe will turn us from a possibility to a probability. Not can we be a decent side? We will be." And then he does go on to say a little bit more, saying we'll attract some good players and hopefully we'll be in a better position next season. Tom, really good words from your managers, pretty much everything that you want to hear. But do you think this will indicate we won't just see fringe players leave, but we'll see starters leave the club as well?
I think yeah. He did say there would be some surprises, and I think we could probably take a guess at a couple of who it might be. I personally think Mark Bowler will be one. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Paddy McNair's one as well.
So you think those are the big two names that are going?
I think I'm more certain on Bowler than McNair. I just wouldn't be surprised if McNair was one.
Interesting. Dan, do you have any names on the top of your head that you think that could potentially be the?
Yeah, I did think Bowler, but I suppose it's easy to say that because he wasn't playing yesterday and he has been dropped recently. Maybe that is the reason why people are thinking that, and it's a very valid one. But could be anyone, to be honest. It really could. But yeah, when he said, what was it, attitude over ability, I thought that was quite telling. And yeah, potentially Bowler.
Okay, well, we do have a question on a surprise for Monday, who we think the surprise is going to be. So I'll come to that in just a moment. But Tom, I'll stick with you because what Wilder was saying there, with everything that's been going on the last few weeks, with the Burnley links, with the potentially of him leaving, does this pretty much cement Wilder now in saying he's here for the long term? He's really planning ahead, and he's all in for Boro.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did that himself with the the interview he gave where he pretty much rolled himself out of it on the third time of asking. But what was it? He's just said in that quote there, "You'll see the level of decision which I've made for quite a long time." I think that in itself is showing that he's here for the long term because he's he's had this idea in mind of who's going to be staying and who's going to be going. And on another part of his interview, he said there's been players in the team who's pretty much been able to dictate to him if they're playing or not. And he said if we were in the same position as Preston, I'd have probably been able to say what's on my mind a little bit sooner than I actually have. So I think he's been thinking about this for a while, and I'm really interested to see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, it made me feel all in with Wilder as well. The mentality that him and his coaching staff have, and what he's done as a manager as well, it just fills me with so much optimism. And I think next season, yes, there is going to be the standard, and the standard's going to be really high from not just him, but the fans as well. They know we've got a fantastic and probably arguably the best manager in the league next season. And also, we could have a team on paper which could be really strong as well if we do bring in the players that we could potentially be linked with. And yeah, I think if we don't go up, the fans would be disappointed next season. Now that's kind of the level of what people are going to be expecting, and it could be it's a tightrope, but I'm still in that picture of in that mindset of if we don't go up next season, I'm still waiting for the fruits of this rebuild and this journey to keep going because we've changed off the pitch now. And it takes about a year, about 18 months to 2 years to really get it right and to really see the fruits of it. So we might not see it next season, which we'll do. We'll have a really good season next year, I think. But maybe that season after could be something really, really special. But Dan, do you feel a lot more optimistic now after you've heard his thoughts? Because I'd be really keen to hear what you think about Wilder's presser as well.
Yeah, I listened to it on the coach back, and it was really good to hear, really refreshing to hear. And I mean, he's going to be ruthless, isn't he? I would love to be a fly on the wall for those conversations on Monday, but I'm not going to be too into it and too kind of celebratory of it because we obviously need to see the action attributed to the words. I think far too many times in recent years we've had interviews that have kind of elevated some thought of ours, be it belief or potential of the team, etc., and it hasn't quite manifested itself in the way that we want it to. So we'll see what happens. He did say there's targets that want to talk to Boro, which is really interesting. I always love it when managers drop that in because I'm trying to be Nancy Drew and thinking, oh God, who could that be? And obviously I've got absolutely nothing to go off for that, but it's going to be interesting. I did like to hear it, but obviously I'd like to see the actions as well, which we will see, I think.
Okay.
I hope.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on to questions then, because every week you were able to send us questions via Twitter, email at theboroBreakdown@hotmail.com, or join our Telegram chat. Telegram chat has multiple channels talking about the Premier League, the Boro Breakdown, the Wobbly Goblin, EFL Championship, and whatever you want to talk about. But the questions is we answer them on the podcast, and we've got quite a few this week. And the first one is from Peter. And I want to come to both of you on this one. And I know I just alluded to it a couple of minutes ago, but Peter says, who is going to be the surprise on Monday? Who's that surprise player who's going to stay or go? Tom, I mean, you might have already said it already, but who's going to be surprised?
I think the surprises for me would be McNair, because I think we've said before, the amount we've looked into it and said, oh, he works best in the free, he seems built for Wilder's formation. But I feel like he wouldn't have been getting past like Steele into the squad on the right-hand side next season anyway. And another surprise I could see would be Jones. But I feel like that would be less likely. That would be like the biggest surprise to me.
So Jones and McNair, that's an interesting one. Dana?
Well, I did mention Steele on the Telegram chat earlier. And
Don't you do it. Don't you do
I
it.
know I would not like to see it, but it's going to be a big season for both Steele and McNair if they both stay, because there's two good players there vying for one position. And I suppose it depends on what's weighted more for that position, because being the wide centre-back in this Wilder system, there is onus on them to get forward to progress the ball. And I think Steele's weakness is when he's being pressed in possession. And as a defender, he's fantastic. He's as solid as a rock most times, 9 times out of 10. But it's that little niggling doubt around his ability to bring the ball out of the back, from the back even, that's making me kind of question it. He has been one of our best performers this season, I will say that, so I'll lay that down there. But as I said, it depends on what's weighted higher between the actual defending and the progression of play. And I know that sounds dead daft because they're in a defensive position, but the style of play that Chris Wilder wants from this side and what we've kind of seen from it, I'd just be interested to see who plays there between him and McNair, because defensively, I think Steele's better than McNair, but in terms of progressing the ball, I think McNair's better than Steele. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Steele had a lovely assist yesterday as well.
It was a bloody brilliant ball, yeah, wasn't it? Yeah.
Don't you ever judge Steele again?
I don't want to see it. I would not like to see it, but it was food for thought, I think. I don't feel like it's going to happen, but it's just yeah. I mean, he's my favourite Boro player. I don't want him to leave, but yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, you got the Dutch flag and everything. What are you going to use that for?
I know it's down there. I know. I didn't bring it yesterday. That's probably why we lost.
Well, but to be fair, you did take it at Barnsley and we lost again. So I mean, you can't really complain. I'm going to go with this could be. I'm going to go 2 things: one for staying and one for potentially going. I'm going to say we might give Bamba another 1-year deal as like a Jonathan Woodgate contract, where like we did we had to give him another year, but he was mainly around coaching. He developed him on the training pitches, but then he just played for like a 2 or 3 minute cameos here and there when we needed him. He came on, so like I think we might do that. But then
haven't we done that this season with Bamba?
Yeah, he's played more games than we thought, though.
True, yeah.
And
needs must and all.
Yeah, so he was more of like a needs must sign him, but I feel like next year it could be that Jonathan Woodgate type contract. But then the surprise, I think Matt Crooks could be in the picture. I don't know why.
The
players to leave. And like, look, this might be a really horrible and shit take because top goal scorer, played well throughout the season. I think he's been the sign of the year as well. And Lego's one of my things from earlier for later. But I think he's been really good this year. But 16 yellow cards this season. Is that discipline something that we really need to hone in on? Can we rely on it when we need to? He does bring a lot to the team, but does the discipline off the ball and, getting that tight rope in games when we don't need it to be, is that a problem? Who knows? But I would hate to see Crooks go. I think Crooks is good, and I think he's had a fantastic season. I really, really like him, but you just never know football. Like, Wilder could think, you know what, I've had enough. Like, I've just think you shit discipline. So
I do think you need a
Maybe.
player like Matt Brooks in the squad, though. I mean, as
Yeah.
you said, top goal scorer, goals from midfield that have been pivotal to us being in the playoff conversation. But yeah, he's better technically than I probably initially gave him credit for, but his touch at times is incredibly what's the word, heavy. And I think we're nitpicking here, aren't we? But
Yeah.
we're trying to find out who could be the surprise, because it could. I mean, he said surprise, so someone that
Could
nobody's expecting.
could Martin go? Could Argentinian Martin go? Maybe that could be something as well.
It
Hasn't
is a
broken,
shout, yeah.
had a lot of injuries. Maybe needs a year out on loan. Obviously such a young kid as well. So who knows? Who knows? We'll find out on Monday, and I'm assuming we'll review it very soon. But we'll move on to the next question. It's from Rob, and he says, "How much of an overhaul is needed? How do we avoid being too knee jerk?" Dana, do you want to take this one?
I feel like it's quite predictable to come off the back of a Premier League. I wish it were Premier League. A sort of failed promotion campaign and say we need a massive overhaul. But I do think we do. 10 to 12 players. I think I mentioned on one of the previous podcasts, because I'm looking. It's not only in terms of position, but stylistically as well. As I mentioned, the wide centre backs want to bring the ball forward. You need the attributes to be able to do that. Being comfortable in possession, a good passer, but good defensively as well. Left wing back, right wing back. We need options there. We need a goalkeeper, of course. We need probably about 10 strikers to cover 20 goals a season, because our strikers are just, we're not going to get a 20 goal a season striker. I've just already decided that now. So yeah, I think we need a big rebuild. I don't think it's knee-jerk to say that, because we just don't really have kind of top championship level players. I think Chris Wilder has got a lot of this squad punching above their ceiling, and the inevitable kind of fallback from that, we've seen it. Ran out of steam, unfortunately. So I think we do need a big rebuild, just to add to certain positions and to sort out the problem positions, which have been at the both ends of the pitch.
Okay, then for the next question, so I'm Ted, and Tom, I'm going to come to you for this one. And he says, "How worrying is the beatings we've taken at Sheffield, Preston, and Barnsley?"
I mean, Barnsley more of the three of them, because that was horrendous against a team that's just been relegated. So I hope it's not worrying going forward and going in the next season. I think it's something we should be looking at in the past. Hopefully, while we're having a good season next season, thinking, God, remember when our mentality was that bad. But I think it does just show how far away we were from actually competing, where we went on such an unbelievable run when Wilder first came in, and then the wheels kind of came off, and no one really kind of kept that mentality. Like I said, in the last couple of weeks, that mental fatigue, it didn't seem like the players that were playing were built for a full season in the Championship. Definitely not a full season competing. So I think it just kind of shows how far we have to come this summer.
Okay, then. So for the next question, it's from Joe, and he says, "How does we wear?" Oh, wait. Sorry, I'll start that right again. How does this season finish? Now you compare where we thought we were under Warnock was still here, and which area of the squad is underrated and need for us in the summer. So I think it's, how does this season compare to, like, if Warnock was still here? Like, where do you think we would have finished? And then which area of the squad is underrated in the summer? So Dana, do you want to take the first part of the question?
When I said 7th before ball was kicked, that was under Warnock, and then I bumped that up on BBC Tees to 6th. So I think the way that the season was going under Warnock, and this is ignoring my pre-season prediction here, I don't think we would have been in the playoff picture. So I'll just say that outright. And then the underrated position that needs strengthening, maybe right-sided centre midfield, because it depends on Martin Piero and his future, and if he stays, if he goes. I know we might be knee-jerking here, because let's be real, it's a relatively young player in a completely different country, probably doesn't know the language still. There's a lot of time that needs to be put into Martin Piero, but he could potentially benefit from a loan. So it depends on him, but there's one potentially that's an underrated position in need of another option. But as I said, it does depend on Piero, I suppose.
Tom, do you have one for underrated?
Probably right wing back. I think whenever the squad's been coming out on a Saturday or whenever we've been playing, people would have automatically assumed that Jones is going to be playing and, in that right wing back position. But then we had those two games where he was out ill, and it just showed how little depth we have in that position. And I think especially considering Jones's form hasn't been great recently, which might not be too much his fault. I know we have been kind of figured out on that right-hand side. Teams know how to kind of defend against him, but we had no plan B in that position. If you can get like another attacking wing back who's a little bit more unpredictable, potentially that might solve a little bit of creativity issues on the right-hand side. But at the moment, it's Jones or nothing.
Okay, then. I think what's on the right wing back stuff, and I like the unpredictability side of things. Like every player becomes predictable eventually. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't think there's one player. I think there's only actually maybe one player in the world in Adama Traore, which I still don't know what I think he's going to do with the ball when he runs with it. But like, I think majority of wingers, like you do come predictable over time. So it's like it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because eventually you always do get found out with the level of analysis that goes on now. It can be quite difficult in it to really find someone as unpredictable as probably like an Adama. But the next question is from the little fella, and he says, "Does Chris Wilder need a plan B? Surely Big Uche could have mixed things up when we needed it this year. I'm not turning on him or the team. It's been brilliant since he came in, but it is worrying. There's plenty of mid-table clubs who have had effective front lines. Let's hope we find one." So, Tom, does Chris Wilder need a plan B?
I wouldn't say so, and this is purely going back to an argument I always have about the current years, where it's like if plan A is effective, 95% of the time, you don't need a plan B, and he was getting slated for having no plan B at that point, even though we had great target men like Kike Sola playing for us. But I think plan A just needs a lot of work. As we've said, we became predictable. And there are areas of the squad that need upgrading. So I think do that, make plan A more effective. There's no real need for a plan B.
Uche has never been the plan B either. I understand why people think that because of the hold-up play. He's somebody that can play with his back to goal and turn his man and get shots off, but he's not the sort of player technically that I think Chris Wilder wants, hence why he shipped him out on loan. And funnily enough, I was looking at his kind of games for Cardiff and he hasn't even started a game for them. It's kind of 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes. He's, something that we've seen from the kind of Chris Wilder style, although we haven't really seen it too much lately, is the pressing from the forwards. And there's absolutely no chance that Uche is going to press a defender. He's going to be knackered after one sprint because that just seems like his muscle mass dictates how many minutes he can play. So yeah, he was never the option.
Just comes back as a stick next season. Such like an athletic build. Next one, it's from Tom Muldowney, and he says, "Is it a concern that Piero's featured so little under Wilder, and particularly since his return from injury?" Tom, I'm going to stick with you for this one. Is it worrying about Piero?
I don't think so. Because when he's came back from injury, we've been an important part of the season. As much as there is questions around Crooks' discipline, he couldn't really take him out of the team at that point. I would have liked to have seen him feature off the bench a little bit more, especially when we need a little bit more creativity in games, because we know he can pick a pass. But I think it depends on how well he's doing and recovering from his injury in that respect as well, and what the science is saying in terms of how many minutes you give him, etc.
He's had so many injuries and just been so unlucky this season. Like when Crooks got that 15th yellow card, you thought, oh, Piero could come back in here. Then he's injured again. It just feels like every time he's just starting to really get going again, something just falls in his way, and it's so disappointing. But the next question, Dan, I'm going to come for you with this one. It says from Corey. It says, How did Spora fall off so bad? And would you sell Jones? Yes or no?
I wouldn't sell Jones, but yeah, Spora's kind of fall from grace, shall we say, being almost a cult hero with a fantastic chant, to being somebody that you're kind of waving goodbye to without any sort of real sadness is quite something. And I think if it wasn't for James Lesaliki, Spora would be in the conversation for flop of the season. I mean, he scored 2 goals since the turn of the year, and only one of those was from open play. And his shot performance in the Championship is incredibly poor, minus 4.17 there, the second worst behind Jordan Hugo. And he's been a big part of, I suppose, the struggles in front of goal, because he's had opportunities. His XG is just shy of 13 and he scored 8 goals. And for a striker to come in with a fairly decent reputation and to score, what was it? I think he's on 5 non-penalty goals and Colburn's on 4. I mean, it says it all, to be honest. It's incredibly poor. And I think his application has been quite disappointing as well. His press was there at the beginning of Chris Wilder's reign. It's not there anymore. And his build-up play as well, his link-up play, one of his biggest strengths from when I watched a few of his clips at Sporting. I haven't really seen that so much. He does try to get in behind. He does make moves. There was a point yesterday where Hausen could have played him in and just delayed it a bit, and it just kind of the opportunity closed up. But other than that, he's just kind of been a passenger since the turn of the year. And his goal return at the start of 2022 to now just shows how big of a passenger he's unfortunately been.
Such a shame, isn't it? Such a shame. I think the start of the season, big fan of Spora. Off the ball movement was fantastic. Like you said, then like that, the turn of the year has been really difficult for Andras. But the final question from Kian, he says, is there a malt curse we can blame this result on? Dana, you just stay right there, because I've got something which might blame our entire season on you. 1 second.
Well, I think we'll be in and around the top 6, but I don't think we'll end up there. I think 7th for me. A bit of final day drama where Boro unfortunately come short.
I should have put a bet on that, shouldn't I?
Dana Malt. The malt curse, the official curse of Middlesbrough Football Club.
I felt pretty strongly about that as well. Rob Law was desperate to try to change my opinion to a top 6 finish when I was on the fan tease that I gave in eventually. But that was one thing I was probably dead set on this season, that we were going to just miss out on the playoffs. And yeah, it happened. It wasn't quite the final day drama that I was thinking of. It was more of a case of, like the kind of topsy-turviness, the Sheffield Derby Rotherham situation from last season, but at the other end of the table. But yeah, unfortunately we missed out.
I think you've pretty much nailed it, Dana, and you can't blame Rob Law for changing your opinion there. Sorry.
I'm not blaming Rob.
Don't put the malt curse on Rob Law here. This is entirely on you. But this is the malt curse, the official curse of Middlesbrough Football Club. But let's move on. It is season review time, and this is one of my favourite shows of the season. And this is where we really embraced this season, because fans were allowed back in the stadium. We had a managerial change, of course, 70 points, 7th position, 3 years of progress if you're looking at back-to-back seasons, and beating Manchester United and Tottenham in the FA Cup. Although we fell short in our playoff hunt, it has been a memorable season, hasn't it, Tom?
It has. I think without the cup run, it would still be sort of memorable. Just going back to the run we were on when Wilder first came in, some of the results we got there, absolutely superb. Some of the football we were playing right at the start, we looked unbeatable, and I could have seen us really challenging up for about third or something. But as we said earlier, the wheels kind of fell off. But it's given us such a good starting point for the next couple of years, and just really looking forward to seeing how we build on it now. I think next season, I think with every season you're aiming to end up higher than you were the season before. So next season it has to be playoffs.
Has to be playoffs. Dana, would you echo all of what Tom's just mentioned there?
Yeah, I agree. We've seen some really good stuff. As Tom said, you take the cup out of the equation. The performance against Forest on Boxing Day was fantastic. The first 45 minutes against Huddersfield was the best football that I've seen Boro play in the longest time at that point. And the late winners against Blackpool and Reading. I'm sure everybody that went to Blackpool will probably say that that's their highlight of the season. I mean, the scenes when that goal went in from Watmore, it was just brilliant. And yeah, we've seen a lot of good things this season to be really optimistic about the next.
Okay, then, and the next one, Tom, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this because throughout the season, we had some unbelievable performances. And we had some equally really poor ones, and that's the nature of the championship. But we did get a question from Matthew Rowney on this, but I've put it into our review part, and they do say he says like, what result or cluster of performances did Borough fall short on? What were the pivotal moments for you? Why Middlesbrough finished 7th?
I think a pivotal moment for me was the 1-0 loss away at Blackburn. Because at that point, we were playing so well. And then to put in a performance like that, and then, Wild's interview after the match, he said we turned up as if we thought the game was already won and we didn't really need to do anything. And I think that is probably the starting point of where you can see the mentality issues with the team kind of starting. And then it's followed over into results after that as well. We mentioned earlier, Barnsley, horrendous results, Hull at home, probably Huddersfield at home as well. It was showing us, how far we have to go.
Yeah, I think that's it. And it's the nature of the championship. The championship in itself is so inconsistent, but the teams that always go up are the consistent ones. And I think we definitely shown that with a new manager at times. But when we're looking at home, we had like 8 or 9 wins in a row in all competitions. It was really positive. We were building a solid platform. And then I just want to come to the managerial change because in the October time, I think it was October, November, was it, when we did switch from Warnock to Wild? I can't remember. Was it was November?
November. I think it was November.
Yeah, and I
It was
always
right
think
before
October.
the international break.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I remember we said in the October that Middlesbrough do tend to change managers in the October when we look at Southgate, Strachan, and Mowbray as well. So we have that really weird date, isn't it? I think all 3 managers within the same week.
I think it's around the 17th of October, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we need to probably put that back. But Middlesbrough did make that managerial change in the summer, in the summer in the November. I think it's a very easy answer, answer to this. But are you happy with the managerial change and the direction we're now going in, everything like that? Are you happy with what we did at the time?
Yeah, I think it was a good point to move Warnock on and bring Wilder in on the eve of an international break, as Tom said. And he's just brought about a new belief in this club and the style of play is what I've wanted, the kind of possession, front foot football. And yes, it might not have panned out the way that we wanted to this season with a playoff finish. And yes, we might have been predictable, but just think about what Chris Wilder can do with these players and with a different set of players as well, with additions coming in the summer for next season. I think that's really, really exciting. I was talking to George, not the top 20 George, who's an Oxford fan. He's obviously seen Chris Wilder being manager of his football club, and he said that we're going to be Summer Force next season. I trust George's opinion, being the EFL expert that he is. So if that doesn't happen, I'm going to blame George.
You can't put the malt curse on George here, Dylan. I'm sorry. But Tom, I'll stick with you on the managerial change because at the time people were saying it could have been managed better. Chris Wilder alluded to it yesterday in his presser where he kind of said it was pretty much nonsense. The club wasn't going in the right direction, which forced the change. I think it's very easy to say that you're happy with the managerial change. And do you think it was the right time? Do you think Warnock was done and dusted? And do you think we've made the right decision?
Yeah, I mean, it probably could have been done sooner in hindsight. I think at the time, Warnock was really kind of controlling that narrative and being the outspoken one. And with what he was saying, where it was like, oh, they've done it over the phone. They locked me out of the office on the Sunday because Wilder was in there and stuff like that. You're like, what have they done? But then you listen to Warnock on TalkSport for the rest of the season, you think, he's just said Azpilicueta's not really a footballer, so does he really know what he's talking about? Yeah, obviously we don't know what went on behind closed doors and stuff, but yeah, I mean, potentially the way we were playing, it could have been done earlier.
Yeah, I think the managerial change as well. Just to echo both your points. I think it's arguably one of the best decisions we've made as a club in recent history. I think because although Warnock came in and did the job that we wanted him to do, and he made us safe from the Woodgate era, and he established us once again as a team which it should be in the Championship for a couple of seasons here and there. But we outgrew him as just a team. The team was a lot better than what he was saying it was, and it's been proved time and time again. I think if we look at like points per game averages of Wilder and Warnock, much better. Pretty much most metrics are probably, even though very marginally, are more likely in Wilder's favour. Marginal differences make the biggest differences in football, and I think we've definitely done that under Chris Wilder, and I'm hoping we will progress that in the next season. But in terms of trends, we every season review podcast we do identify a few trends in the way that the style's been, our strikers, and this year we're going to look at goalkeepers as well. But even last year we spoke a lot about strikers, and Warnock at one point in his press conferences did say, "I don't even have any strikers." So this year though, Sparrow got 8, Watmore got 7, Coburn got 4, Balogun got 3. Connolly got 2, and so did Uche before he went out on loan. When we're looking at strikers, and we've said earlier on the podcast about rhythm and trying to give players the consistency to play over a prolonged period of time, and when not to change them. But Dana, do you think that striker rotation has played a part in our strikers' inconsistency and form throughout the year?
I think you could easily swap that around and say that our strikers' inconsistency has played a part in the rotation. Because let's be honest, if they were scoring and performing really well, it wouldn't even be a question of rotation, would it? You'd be in the team and that would be that. So, none of them have been strong enough or good enough consistently to be in that team consistently. Watmore and Sparrow are probably the biggest example of that. They were a decent partnership, but not necessarily great. They were just the best of a bad bunch, which elevated the kind of desire to have them playing regularly. And what has been mentioned a few times this season, specifically by the guy that sits in front of me at the Boro match, is that it's just like shuffling cards, trying to pick which striker combination we're going to go into a game with. And yeah, the striker rotation might not have helped, because in terms of this, I suppose the telepathy of knowing where one striker's going to go, the movement he's going to make, the runs that he's going to make, being in the right spaces and playing the pass at the right time, etc. It probably doesn't help. But at the same time, can you really blame Chris Wilder? He's had a bunch of strikers that aren't really staking their claim to stay on the side consistently, because their performances don't really deserve that. So it's been tough, and we definitely need a striker that can be strong in their performances consistently and be a part of the style of play that Chris Wilder wants. A good hold-up striker with good technical ability, someone that I would like to see for a sign.
Tom, would you agree with what Dana was saying there? Do you think there's probably more to it? Do you think that do you think rotation has played a part, or do you think it's the other way? Do you think it's that our inconsistency of strikers has really played a part into that?
I think it is the inconsistency of them, to be honest. They didn't fit into the system the way we would need them to. I think when you got Sparrow, who the movement's great, you can see him pointing all the time, but that should transfer over into Preston better than it did, and it seemed like he wasn't kind of making that effort. I was just thinking a bit earlier on, we were talking about the strikers pressing. Watmore's probably the only one who's done it well, but also his finishing's not the best. I mean, it's inconsistent. He's scored some cracking goals, but it is inconsistent. He's missed some from 2 yards out and stuff. I was thinking to myself as well, imagine if Wilder was manager while Tunchai was playing, he'd have loved him. But I think they need to really make an effort to fit into the system a bit more. there's players throughout the squad who you can see have adapted to the system well. Tab being one of them, Steele being another. But it just seemed like the strikers, bar Watmore, weren't really bought in on the pressing side of things.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, just saying that, only you alluded to like the twin try thing there as well, and so the pressing side of things. Play devil's advocate, and the inconsistency that you've both mentioned there. Do we even actually play to these strikers' strengths, Tom?
I mean, there's an argument to that, but as I said, the strikers should be trying to fit into the system more than it is just kind of like being unadaptable and saying, "No, you're not playing to my strengths." Uches went out on loan. We were never going to play to his strengths, and it was clear he wasn't going to fit into part of the system. Sparrow should have fit into the system. He just didn't seem to. And then you look at Connolly and Balogun as well. I think you can't question the effort Connolly made to try and fit into it. He did try and press. It's just the goals didn't come with that as well. And Balogun, personally, I don't think fit into this system, which I'm disappointed about because I was looking forward to seeing him as part of this system on the left hand side when he signed in January. But I don't think it worked well.
So, what would be the best way to play at the forwards? And Dana, would you look to keep the same system and try to bring in players that would be more adaptable to it, or is there a point where we might have to change the way we play to suit what we've got?
I think there needs to be a certain amount of flexibility up front, that when something isn't working, for example, if we are going to try to go in behind, which did happen in the game against Stoke, we were getting between the centre halves and playing those balls through. We scored from one of them. If that's not working, we've got to have somebody that could come short. And we have seen that a lot this season where strikers come short. But as I've mentioned so many times, as we've mentioned so many times, we don't have a striker that can sustain pressure and be able to, I suppose, be the hold-up player as well. Victor Gyökeres did so well against us because he was exactly that. And I mean, players like Gyökeres, we're never going to get a player like him, to be honest. And we're never going to get him specifically. But somebody that is decent at many things, a sort of jack of all trades, a master of none sort of thing, if you know what I mean. I feel like that sort of player is needed in this team alongside a Poacher. So Carlton Morris would be a fantastic signing for us because I think his hold-up play was brilliant and has been brilliant this season. He's probably the only Barnsley player that's emerged with credit from their season. Don't be put off by their relegation. They've still got some good players whose star might have fallen a little bit, but there's potential in them to bring them back up. And I think Carlton Morris is somebody that is maybe not a regular starter, maybe somebody that we can rely on at times to be that to be alongside a Poacher. I think he'd be a great signing. Somebody like him with the hold-up play, the kind of link-up play, and also a decent finish. I think he's got 7 goals this season, which isn't bad. I think that would be good.
Okay, then. So let's move on to patterns of play then, because when we look at Middlesbrough's play from the change from last year to this year, I appreciate a lot has changed in terms of Middlesbrough and the style and the way that we were playing under a previous regime to now. I think it's much more different. One was hitting the ball in the channels and hoping in a much more compact shape defensively. But this is more of a patient build-up, try to be a bit more aggressive in our press. And, well, especially when we sit on a much higher line. And, we are much more dominant on that right-hand side. So when we're looking at Boro's patterns of play, 42% was on that right-hand side with Isaiah Jones, but it did peak at one point to 49%. So how do you amend that change? We've said earlier in the podcast that Boro did become predictable at times. So how do you change and how would you remove that over-reliance on that right-hand side then? And do you think it's that Boro's downfall? There's too much on that right?
I think there's been many downfalls of Boro this season. That is probably one of them, the way that we petered out towards the end of the campaign. But we just need to, as I said, diversify the attack and add another similar option, I suppose, on that left-hand side. Somebody that is comfortable in possession of the ball, is a goal threat, is creative, maybe even converting a midfielder to left wing back. That's something that Ryan Lowe, of course, we've just faced his Preston side, he likes to do with his players. Connor Grant, who's been on my transfer wish list, was a a midfielder converted to a left wing back. Similarly with, speaking about Barnsley there, Callum Styles, Ryan Law, I think was the manager at Bury that converted Callum Styles to a left wing back. So players that, are, as I said, comfortable in possession, can progress the play and are playmakers, essentially. And adding that little bit more of a threat on that left-hand side to balance it out with the right, so there's not so much of an over-reliance on Jones. That's what I'd like to see from Boro. And I'm sure that's one of the positions that we're trying to tie up and strengthen, because that's exactly what we need. But going out and getting somebody like Conor Grant, like Callum Styles, I think that would be really good to see, just to add a little bit more, as I said, balance to the team.
Okay, so like looking at the goalkeepers, it's been a huge talking point throughout this podcast this season, and also last year as well. Bettinelli was really, really poor. You could argue that we've actually improved in goal this season, but it depends who you want to ask. But Tom, how do our keepers stack up against other goalkeepers in the Championship?
Poorly would be the answer to that.
Right on.
Looking at the stats, Joe Lumley 16th out of 21 in terms of save percentage. And if you're looking at the goals prevented stat, Joe Lumley is 54th out of 58, and Luke Daniels is 47th out of 58. And you look at the top five in terms of goals prevented, 4 of them are in the playoffs. Admittedly, one of them is Matt Ingram, who's let in 7 on his debut for Luton. So, but Wes Foderingham first, Matt Ingram second, Lee Nichols third. Dan Grimshaw from Blackpool is actually 4th, and then Bryce Sambers 5th. So I think that just kind of outlines how good you need your goalkeeper to be high up the league.
What's Lumley's goals prevented? Is it -6 something?
It is -3.6. Oh no, that's Luke Daniels. Sorry, -6.2.
Oh no, I was going to say -6.2 is pretty bad, yeah. And I had a look into the stat, errors leading to goals, 3 this season. I couldn't find a keeper in the Championship that I looked at that had more than 3. There was a few on 3, like Luke Southwood, for example, at Reading, but he's been a calamity, let's be honest. And I said 3 there. That's only the statistics. From the naked eye, you could probably say that he's made a few more errors that have led to goals. But what I will say as well, actually, is as much as you can say that Lumley's been at fault for this season, for all of his mistakes, I also think about the missed chances that we've had. Sparrow 2-0 down against Sheffield United, that could change the game completely. Watmore's miss against Stoke, Tav's miss against Swansea, Connolly's miss against Swansea. There's so many. So it's both ends of the pitch that are a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we were saying earlier, it's fine margins in football. If we did put those chances away, what does the game look like? And then also at Lumley as well, we had to play a different style of goalkeeper under a new manager as well. So probably more of his mistakes came under Wilder, but appreciate he did get dropped by both managers, which isn't a good sign. But Tom, does this prove that a goalkeeper should be our number 1 in the shopping list next season? Because we've got Hemming, who's going to come back from Kilmarnock, and he has just he's in the Scottish Player of the season team, isn't he? And then also won a trophy up there as well. You've got Solbrin as well, who came back on loan. He was playing in Scotland and did well. You've got Daniels and Lumley. How would you manage it? And also, is number 1 our shopping list? We've
actually still got Stojanovic as well, but
and Stojanovic
he's going to be getting a look at.
I forgot he existed, to be honest.
I think we do need a new goalkeeper for next season. Looking at those stats, I mean, it's mad to think that we finished 7th with where our goalkeepers have finished in those stats and where the playoff goalkeepers have finished. So I think that just kind of outlines, you get a slightly better goalkeeper we could have been in the playoffs. So I think that just kind of shows how much we're going to need one in the summer. Probably a better time than January to be looking one as well, because no one's letting the number 1 keeper go in January. They're probably more likely to in the summer. I think one of Lumley and Daniels has to go, and my personal opinion is that it will be Lumley. I think Daniels will be staying as number 2. Stojanovic, I think, will be gone. obviously you just said he forgot he existed, but
Quite
I think
existed,
he'll be out on as free transfer, or if we can get any money for him back, just to kind of get his wages off the books. And I think either one of him and Bring will be in number 3 for next season.
Okay, then. So then the final question out of all this season, before we move to the awards, how would you rate this season out of 10? Dana, do you want to go first?
I would say 7, I think. We've had some really good moments, some high moments, but some low moments as well. And I think those drubbins, the Sheffield Uniteds, the Prestons, even the game against Barnsley show, I think they're indicative of kind of where we are, who we are, and what needs to be done. So, yeah, it's been a good season still, more positives than negatives. But, yeah, still a lot of work to be done.
Tom?
I'm going to sound proper harsh now, but 6. I think my reason behind that is 9 or 10 would be automatic promotion, and 8 or 7 would be playoffs or getting the playoff final. And I think it's 6 because I'm looking at it as a whole. You got to take Warnock's contribution or lack of contribution into that as well. And the first half of the season wasn't good. We did improve. We've had the cup run, which increases it in my estimation a little bit. I would say a high 6. It's not far off being a 7, but we've had some still shocking performances in the second half of the season, which have cost us as well. So yeah, I've got to go with 6 overall.
Okay, then I will go. You're right there, Tom. Just headbutting your mic.
No, I punched
it. I'm gonna go with 6. Yeah, I'll go with 6 as well, Tom. Average season. Average. Well, no, you know what, Tash? 7. I'll go 7. Sorry. I think the FA Cup and the FA
6.5.
6.5. I'll go in the middle. He's 4th. I'll be the filling in the sandwich.
You be the egg.
I'll be the egg and mayo in your sandwich there. Yeah, I think it was a good season. I think if we were rating this on surprise, it would be up there because I think under the previous manager we were nowhere near, and I didn't think we were going to be anywhere close to the playoffs. So, yeah, I think if it was a surprise, I'd be like 8 or 9. But now, I would probably say 6.5 out of 10. But let's move on to the Boro Breakdown Awards. I absolutely love this part because we like to give out our Player of the Season, our just favourite moments. The Shithouse of the Year is going to be one this year. It's going to be great. I'm going to come into it. But before we do all of that, before even a ball was kicked, we had some bold predictions. So let's see how we did. What is your bold prediction for this season? Who wants to go first?
I think my bold prediction was we're going up. I don't know. Call me crazy. I think we could do it.
Well, I've gone with Tav. Both Tav and Nick Pierce get double figures.
Okay, good one. I'm going to say if we're mid-table by Christmas, Warnock's gone. Oh, I tell you what, that Warnock one was not bad, wasn't it? I tell you what.
Mine was awful. Why did I ever think that any Boro player was going to get into double figures? I mean, I know Crooks did, but still.
Yeah. I know. Well, and Tom.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about him, mate.
Well, you know what, Tom? I'm gonna. There's something else about your predictions this season because we did do a surprise package of the season. Danny, you went with Uche. I went with Crooks and then changed my mind to Mark Bowler. And Tom, you went with just a wonderful pick.
I'm sticking with my theory for this one. I'm going to go Sammy Amiobi. I think come the end of the season, we're all going to be like, what a season he's just had.
What a season he's just had.
You could argue that it was a surprise that he never played for us, but that's up there with Elliot picking Sam Stubbs for Player of the Year or something.
Hey, I tell you what, that Sam Stubbs one will stick long in the memory for Breakthrough Player of the Year for him only be sold probably about a week later. But the Player of the Season one as well, our predictions for that at the start were Tom, you went with Del Fry, who has had a fantastic season, and Dana, me and you went for Marcus Tavernier. So now it's time for us to pick our player of the season. And Dana, who do you want to pick for your player of the year?
Oh, this one's tough. It's between two. I feel like I'm going to have to go for Isaiah Jones over Tav. I just think he's been brilliant throughout the two managerial. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we've had two managers and two entirely different styles. So trying to pick a player of the season throughout the entirety of the campaign, not just the kind of wilder time, it's tough. But I think Jones has just been brilliant. A massive surprise. Nobody really expected it. I don't even think he was, and his performances, although he's definitely been quieter towards the end of the season, we cannot forget the good moments that he's brought and the promise that he's kind of fulfilled this season. So yeah, I would say Jones, but Tav is very, very close. There's this kind of idea that Tav was poor under Warnock. Don't agree with it. I think he's been pretty consistent throughout the entirety of the campaign, but I feel like I can't go for Tav, so it's difficult.
Okay, then Tom.
Sammy up? No. I actually am going to go for Tav. I think he's been superb this season, and since Wilder's come in, he's moved to this. I don't want to say new role because he's always kind of described himself as a more central player, but he's had to go for this more centre mid, left side of centre mid role. He's added so much to his game, and you can see how influential a player he's becoming, the leadership qualities coming in. I think there's still a lot more to come from him, and I just think he's been superb, especially since Wilder came in.
Yeah, it's a good pick, and I like your pick as well, Dana. The player that we haven't mentioned is Johnny Hausen, and I know a lot of fans will want him to be that player of the year. He's played excellent since Chris Wilds came in. But I'll probably say since January, we've seen the best of Johnny Hausen, and I think the system really does suit him. And he's played well in games where we needed a big result. And like when you look at the Manchester United game, you look at the Tottenham game, I'd probably say Stoke the other week, where he was absolutely fantastic and arguably the best player on the pitch, and he's been really, really good. And I think he does deserve a shout, but I just remember at the start of the season, from maybe August to maybe November, where Hausen was getting pelters week in, week out. I remember saying on the podcast that his legs had gone and we need to replace him in the January. And he's completely proved me wrong in the second half of the season. Thoroughly deserves his contract, but I'm not going to pick him. And I'm going to pick Anthony Steele for as my player of the season, because I think he's been a player. When we appreciate he has been injured for I think about 10 games of the season, but when he hasn't played, we've missed him massively. But when he has played, he's been absolutely superb, Mr. Reliable, 7 or 8 out of 10 most weeks, getting assists now in a right centre back position. And also, you can really really see his development this year as a player. He's came on leaps and bounds since I think since Woodgate signed him. You can see the quality was there, but since he's moved much more in a central position, appreciate used to be a centre defensive midfielder at the time when we did sign him. But I think this year has been a year where you could build a house and you could have Anthony Dijksteel next to him, and you probably say Anthony Dijksteel's more reliable in the house. And I think he's just been superb for me, and I think that's why he's probably going to get my player of the season. But Johnny Hausen definitely deserving a mention, because the second half of the season, I think he's been absolutely superb and thoroughly deserves his new contract if he does sign it, of course. Let's go on to the next one then, because let's go signing of the season. I blurted mine out earlier, so everyone knows mine's Matt Crooks. But who do you two go for? Tom, do you want to take this one first?
I think there's only Crooks you can pick out of all our signings. You could maybe, in fact, I don't know if you make a case for Bamber and Peltier, but they've probably contributed the most out of all signings, other than the other ones. But yeah, Crooks, he's finished as our top scorer, top yellow cards.
Yellow cards.
He's done his job in the team well, so yeah, can't go for anyone other than Crooks, really.
Okay, then Dana, hat trick.
Yeah, it'll have to be. I think Crooks has been good even if you take out the fact that nobody else has quite been great themselves. But Crooks has been good this season. He's definitely surprised me as well. Didn't really expect much from him, and he's been fantastic.
Okay, then, and then the next one is favorite moment of the season. Dana, it's been a memorable one, like we've all said. But what is your favorite moment?
Yeah, there's obviously knocking Man United out on penalties at Old Trafford and Josh Coburn's goal against Spurs. But I'm actually going to go for Tav's goal against West Brom. Me and Tom were sat next to each other on that game, and I just remember we'd say it to each other, we were like, Tav! And then, oh my God, it was like, it was just like that finally moment. And it was a good goal as well. It has to be said. It was a great goal. Dyke Steele on the right-hand side, really tight to the line and nutmegging. I think it was Connor Townsend. Thankfully, Duncan Watmore completely missed the ball and allowed Tav to steal in at the far post. Yeah, it was a good moment, and that was the winner as well in that game. So yeah, Tav's goal against West Brom, kind of going away from the obvious picks. I think that was a good moment.
Yeah, and shout out to Steve Bruce for making that happen by doing absolutely nothing tactically to stop it.
He was too busy thinking about that bacon.
Yeah, how's the bacon? Did you say? Tom, what's your moment of the season?
I am actually going to go for an obvious one. I'm going to go for Elanga skying his penalty over the bar at Old Trafford. Personally, I didn't really celebrate the Crooks goal because I just assumed that VAR was going to overturn it. I watched the ball ricochet off Watmore's hand. It was like in eye line with me. I was like, they're going to overturn it. So there's no point in celebrating. So I feel like I missed out in terms of celebrating that. But as soon as Elanga absolutely hit the moon with his penalty, everyone went wild. It was like 5 minutes of just kind of like pure celebrating and watching all the Man United fans leaving to go on the bus back to London. So got to go with that one.
Love that dig there. We love a dig at a Premier League club.
And it's interesting as well because Ralph Rangnick has even said that result against Middlesbrough was the catalyst, is a main catalyst in their downfall of the season. So thank you very much for that. Mine will be, I think it's a toss up really. I think there's two moments. There's Blackpool away where Watmore scores and then everyone goes crazy. And Neil Madison's commentary is absolutely superb on that one. And then Joshy Coburn against Tottenham. What a moment, like a young kid, he finds himself in a little pocket of space and absolutely slams on the winner. And to beat them at such a good night at the Riverside, it could be that as well. So I'm gonna go Joshy Coburn. Joshy, you deserve this one. I'll give you it. So Josh Coburn is my moment of this season against Tottenham. And it comes to our podcast one, our Boro Breakdown podcast moment of the season. It's a difficult one because we have such a hoot on this podcast throughout the year. We've had some really good moments. But what we're going to pick for our favourite one, Dana, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to say raising awareness for the MND Association and Motor Neuron Disease and raising money for it as well. I think our listeners have been bloody fantastic, honestly, smashing that £2,000 target, which we've since had to raise because they did so well to get us there. And I think that's just been brilliant. My mum was a massive Boro fan, and she would have been texting me yesterday saying, "No, the Boro need to pull their socks up" and things like that. And she was a very charitable person, so yeah, she would have absolutely loved seeing all the donations coming through, and I think that's been brilliant.
Okay, so that is been a great moment, and also we are still raising money for that as well. So if you are watching us on YouTube on a different device, we have just put a QR code there. So if you just follow that QR code, you can donate to our fundraising. We have hit over £2,000 this season, but we are still looking to raise a little bit more, and we have partnered with the MND next season as well. So we're looking to raise a bit more money there as well. But Tom, moment of the season, what are you going to go for?
It's a tough one because it's between two for me. It's either us doing our own quiz at Playbrew, and Dana singing "We Are the East Stand" and stuff
was
like that.
Was that night?
Yeah,
that was that night.
Yeah. That was a great moment. But also the podcast after the United game where I turned into Sean Dyche It was my birthday weekend, so it feels like after that United game, I was just out since then. I was in red car until 5 a.m, and then we recorded at like 11. And God, I was rough, but who cared? It was such a good podcast, like good vibes that day because of the results, and yeah, just great moment.
Yeah, I think us going from online to offline is been a really good thing this year to sell out the quiz, and then to have all the money we've raised for the M&D, to have Sam Morsey on at the start of the season where he was going absolutely nowhere, and then all of a sudden Neil Warnock ships him out, which was a good one. Having David Wheater on, which was good. I think obviously it's kind of known now that we do a lot of transfer review shows with Craig and Dom at the Gazette, and that's a lot of fun with those guys. And we just Tom, Sammy Amiobi predictions up there. It's just been a great season. I think I can't really pick one. I think we've had so many good moments this year, and hopefully next year we'll have even more. So maybe a cop-out answer, but so many good memories in that process. And I haven't even mentioned like the growth side of things as well, which has been amazing too. So, but the final question, and it's probably my favourite question because it's been something new that we've introduced to this show this year. I was saying to Sean Dyche there, Tom, but it's the Shithouse Island. Shithouse Island has just went down a storm with everyone that listens to the podcast. So let's get the island up then, because I'll get that up there on our screen if it lets me. There we go.
Oh, sorry. Just took it off immediately.
So Shithouse Island. It is a jam-packed island, but who is the Shithouse of the year? We've got a lot of people on there. We've got some people from previous seasons as well. So we could pick our top shithouse if we want to. Or we could do shithouse of the year. Tom, do you want to pick your shithouse?
Yeah, I can see it down there at the bottom. The Boro fans shouting Ronaldo celebration. Just going back to that Old Trafford game again. It's just mad that there's going to be about 10,000 Boro fans permanently living rent free in Ronaldo's head now. I fully believe he wakes up at night in cold sweat sometimes, just thinking about all the Boro fans shouting at him every time he missed. So that was brilliant that night.
Okay, then. So Boro fans, get your shithouse of the year award. Dana, who was your shithouse?
Pick your shithouse. That is some line. I would go the same. I think that was brilliant. Every time that Ronaldo made a mistake in that game, it was just greeted by that, and I thought it was bloody brilliant. So yeah, I realised in this moment actually that people listening on audio won't actually see this, but we will put up a picture of the Shithouse Island on our socials.
And then there's obviously, I think there's Lee Peltier deserves a shout. His performance, he's just a constant shithouse. Johnny Hausen celebrating at the Stratford End, being a Leeds fan as well. Joshy Coburn with the ear, with the cupping of his ears. And there's some great moments on there, aren't there? Like Crooks and Tav. But yeah, I think Boro fans do it, don't they? I think Boro fans at Man United definitely is the shithousery moment of the year. And, we'll keep the island next season. Don't you worry about it. And we'll look to grow it once again. But guys, that is it. Thank you very much for joining me. And thank you very much for joining me throughout the season, and also the listeners as well. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks' time with a transfer show where we're going to break down all of the questions that you've submitted to us over the last week. And then also we'll be working with the Gazette in a few weeks after that just to review some transfer business as well. But right now, it's been a season of highs, a season of lows, changes and directions. But we know for sure the future is very bright on Teesside. This has been the Boro Breakdown podcast for the 2021-2022 season. And that was all your Boro Matchday chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.